Hi, I'm the Plant Gals, and today I thought that I would do a video of how I ended up with the two rescued reptiles that I have and kind of just talk about why I chose to rescue them, my thought process into why I felt that rescuing would be better than getting from a breeder at the stage of life that I'm in, maybe a little bit about some of my other reptiles and why I bought them from a breeder. Basically, I have two rescued reptiles. I have a crested gecko. Her name is Xiao. She is a morph. Like, a lot of people think she's like a Halloween morph. I think she's just kind of a regular crested gecko. She is very pretty. I will put a picture here. I will put pictures all over throughout, depending on where my head ends up. She's amazing. And then I got her last April, and I have a new addition. I have a blue tongue skink. Her name is Lucille. I named Lucille. I did not change the crested gecko's name, but I did change the blue tongue skink's name. She is a crested gecko that belonged to an international student on the campus of the university I go to. She was a dorm pet, which is something that is really kind of controversial. So I had a dorm pet. Despite all of the animals I have now, I only had one when I lived in my dorm, and it was my hedgehog Chef. I brought him with me to university, and then when I moved out of university into the place I'm in now, Chef came with me. So I have had a dorm pet. I think in general dorm pets are really bad ideas. It would be really like high on a pedestal of me to say that my decision was better than everybody else's. I took all the steps and made it essentially so that nothing could ever happen to Chef. I was accommodated to have a pet on campus. I wouldn't call him a support animal, but I guess he kind of was. It's a bad idea to get a dorm pet for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is they can be forcibly removed from the premises. Chef had the proper documentation. I don't want to be the person that's like, well, I can do it, but you can't. It really depends on the circumstances. Somebody reached out to me on Instagram. They follow me, and I've posted about like my animals before, and they're like, hey, I have these reptiles. A friend of mine bought them and was keeping them in his dorm, and he went back to China, and now I have these reptiles that were kind of left behind. And I was like, oh, okay. Initially, I was explaining how they could probably take them to a rescue organization and stuff. It kind of became clear that that was not going to happen. I had just got Dulce, my lychee gecko, and I had actually already set up an enclosure. This is the reason I took Xiao, was because I had set up an enclosure for Dulce. I got Dulce. Dulce was like, it wasn't like the breed or anything. I just, like, in my head, Dulce was bigger than he actually was, and I had a pretty decent sized Exoterra that was just not suitable for him. He had to live in a bin for at least another like 6 months or so before he could upgrade. So I had this enclosure just sitting there, and ultimately, if this gecko didn't end up with me, that it was gonna be really sketchy who this gecko kind of ended up with. This one person was super, super sweet. She came to my house with the enclosure. I just took the entire thing because I thought that'd be easiest. So she dropped off the enclosure. International student, had a weird knowledge of reptiles for sure. It's a really odd situation. So she came in like 12 by 12 by maybe 18 or 24 Exoterra, and she was fed the right food. She was fed Pangea. Except I think they must have been lazy, for lack of a better word, and literally like in a cereal bowl, like there was a cereal bowl this big taking up almost the entire floor of the enclosure, filled with Pangea. Like probably like close to an entire one of those small bags of Pangea looks like it had been mixed up and just stuck in the enclosure. And this is what's weird. So like they're feeding them the right food, but like totally in the wrong way. And then something else that was odd is it looked like it was maybe an attempt to be bioactive. I don't know if maybe they looked up the fact that bioactive was like easier to care for and thought that, oh, well, you know, like I'm kind of lazy, I can't take care of this crested gecko, let me make it bioactive. So like its substrate was so wet. The substrate of this enclosure was so like soaked, like you could pour water out of it. And it had no drainage layer. It was full of isopods. I have done bioactive setups and stuff. Bioactive setups aren't a life hack to being lazy. It had a plant, like a living plant, like a little Dracaena. So it was just soaking wet dirt, a cereal bowl, a Dracaena, and then this little, I don't even know what it is. It's like similar to like one of those like botanical like monkey pod things, except it has like a horizontal slit in it. It was like the slit was about like this big, the opening. That was the only hide she had, and when I got her, she was quite small. I'll put a picture of her baby here when I got her. I don't know how old she was. I was told that she was at least a year old, but she was really small when I got her. They said that they'd had her like 10 months, so that was really weird. I don't know if she was just really like malnutrition, but man, she eats now. I can put in pictures of her now. She's so awesome now. But yeah, she would only crawl up in this tiny little thing. She still squeezes herself in these tiny hides. She is finally too big to fit into this little thing anymore. I do keep it in her enclosure. It's almost like a security blanket to her. Sometimes I catch her sleeping still on top of it, like she will fall asleep right on top of it, because it was the only place she felt safe in this enclosure that had no coverage, no hides, except that, which I literally wouldn't consider a hide. It was literally just like a botanical. It does make me sad, and I kind of wish I could get rid of it, but she does seem to have some sort of, I don't want to say emotional because she's a gecko, but emotional attachment to this pod and like a certain safety aspect. I'll put a picture of enclosure here. It has one living plant in it. It has a cleanup crew of powder orange isopods, which have worked great. No, I don't just use the cleanup crew. She poops all over the glass, and I have to clean that enclosure more than any other enclosure I have, even my lychee gecko. Maybe because she got brought in with the lychee gecko at the same time, she thinks that pooping on the glass is like the thing to do. She has been awesome. She is not handleable at all by anybody who isn't me, and even with me, it's scary. I think she's gonna drop her tail all the time. But I do try to slowly work with her. She will come out onto my hand. She's pretty good at that, but once she's out, she's like, oh my god. And they told me that she was very skittish when they got her. If you remember when I said there were actually 2 reptiles that this person had, an adult leopard gecko in one of those plastic critter keepers, tiny. They sent me the enclosure, and I was like, you need to get a new one. And I actually ended up giving them Michael, my leopard gecko's baby enclosure, which is not the right size for an adult leopard gecko, but it was better than what they had, and they didn't have the money to get a new enclosure, so I'm like, okay, this is it. So yeah, that's a great story. That's how I got Xiao. She's my queen. At the same time, like literally like a week or 2 earlier, I got Dulce de Leche, which is my lychee gecko. Dulce came from a reputable breeder. I'm not the type of person that's like, adopt, don't shop. I think that there's reasons to adopt and there's reasons to shop. When I got Xiao, there were things that I was not prepared for, but I was prepared to be prepared for them. So she came with a lot of stuck shed, and I wish it was on her feet, but it wasn't. The stuck shed was all around her mouth, her eyelashes, and of course her eye caps. So if you could imagine removing a contact lens from a gecko, that's pretty much what it's like. I had to learn how to do that on my own. I think she could sound silly, but tell that I was helping her. Really slow and working with her body language and everything. It was like removing eye makeup, like mascara, little eyelashes, the skin off those, which very small. And yeah, contacts from a gecko. And then once that was done, she was a lot healthier, a lot happier. She could see. Just live, laugh, loving. I love that gecko. It's one of my mom's favorites and a lot of my friends' favorites because I know the crested geckos are super common and popular in the reptile community, but a lot of people don't realize that there's geckos with eyelashes, and it's really cute. So all my friends think that she's like a queen. She has little eyelashes, and she's super cute. She has really great structure, really great gecko, no spinal kinks, no nothing. She doesn't have metabolic bone disease. On all accounts, she is now a healthy gecko. When I got her, definitely wasn't, but she is now. So that was my first experience with rescuing a reptile. Very unofficial, show up at my house, here's a gecko, figure it out. So then I have a deal with my boyfriend where I'm allowed to get 1 pet a year. I cheated last year and I got 2. And like, there's no deal on plants and there's no deal on bugs. But I mean, unless I was getting like tarantulas and stuff, but on isopods. There's clauses in the contract, I won't get into it, but I'm allowed to get 1 reptile a year. Last year I got 2. He was okay with me taking on Xiao because he knew the circumstances and I explained it to him, and I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen to this animal. So I got her. I love it, I'm happy. This year, I was debating between 2 things. I was like, do I adopt an animal or do I not and get from a breeder? So last year I did both. I got my gecko, Dulce de Leche, from obviously a breeder, and then I got Xiao from an international student who dumped it in their dorm and left. And that's my situation. Both of them are great experiences. I love Xiao so much. And I love Dulce more. And it's just because Dulce is so handleable. Dulce is my dream reptile, Xiao gecko, I'll say it a million times, and getting him was a dream experience. But I didn't really have any other dream reptiles that I could afford. And the next reptiles I wanted to get a bigger reptile. So kind of my wish list was looking like a tortoise or maybe some type of monitor, like an Aki monitor, a Kimberly rock monitor. If I had lots of money, a green tree monitor, a blue tree monitor. Those are still things that I want. Tegu was kind of my list. So I was like, oh, I don't really know what I'm gonna do. A reptile rescue where I am, who I follow on Facebook and I kind of keep up with them, and I debated rescuing from them for a while. This post came up that they had gotten in a blue tongue skink. And as soon as I saw her, I was like, okay, I will probably put in an application because I loved getting Xiao. The whole rescuing experience was really unique. I saw this blue tongue skink come up and she just spoke to me. And I was like, I liked the experience of taming down Xiao and the work I did with her. This would be more official. I'd have, more information and it wouldn't be as sketchy as what I did last time. And I'd also be, the money from my adoption fee would go to supporting other reptiles at the rescue. I also bought her enclosure from the rescue. So I was like, okay, like this is cool. And I knew that I could buy my enclosure from the rescue. So I was kind of like, okay, I can support this rescue and get a cool animal. So I saw that post go out that they got her, and she wasn't in the worst shape, but it wasn't great. And I didn't know when she would go up for adoption. And it said on the post, like, hey, we don't get these in very often, and, like, we're not gonna announce when she goes out. We're just gonna put up the post when her adoption forms are open, but we're not gonna, like, send DMs to people who want to be on, like, a wait list or something. So I actually debated sending a message because I really wanted her and being like, would you maybe consider a wait list just for me, pretty please? But I didn't because I respected their rules and I was like, okay, I'll play by the rules. So I ended up just waiting. I thought it'd be, 4 months maybe or something. Maybe 3 weeks later, I see her post go up that she's ready for adoption. And I saw it within maybe like 5 minutes of the post. Instantly, I'm in the comments and I'm like, send me her adoption forms. And I was told that when they get in uncommon animals, they keep their adoptions open for like 48 hours so that it gives other people the opportunity to apply. Well, lo and behold, either nobody else applied or they just knew that I really wanted her. And on New Year's Eve, I got a message saying that my adoption form had been accepted. They wanted some clarification on some of the stuff. They have a really great adoption form. It's like super thorough. So they had some questions and I just wasn't specific enough in some parts, which I love to see. And it was crazy the amount of detail they wanted me to go into. It was awesome, them making sure that I was going to be the right home for her, and I absolutely love to see it. And so I was literally lighting off fireworks and trying to send like, oh, I'm gonna get this specific type of light and this is how I'm gonna set up misting and like stuff like that. Like as I'm setting off fireworks on New Year's Eve, I got accepted. It was awesome. So I drove out. They're like located in a small town outside of kind of the big city that I'm in. Not that far, maybe an hour and a half. I did a little road trip, picked up my queen, and I came home with her. So here's the sitch. Lucille was originally called, I think, some sort of dragon from Game of Thrones. There's lots of cool dragon names from Game of Thrones. It's cool to name your animals that, like, Vhagar or whatever. I don't actually know what her name was. They just said that they thought it was a dragon's name from Game of Thrones. The rescue called her Blue. I like having fun names for my animals. Blue, the blue tongue skink, is a little bit low effort. Like, my cat's name is Nago, which is like a weird lore thing with my hedgehog, Chef Kawasaki, which is a weird lore thing with my friend's cat, Kirby. It's like weird Kirby lore. And then I have Michael, my boyfriend's leopard gecko. Not the craziest name, but it's kind of weird to have a leopard gecko named Michael. I have Randy the Macho Man Savage, my Kenyan Samboa, Dulce de Leche, and Xiao Hulong. And I'm like, Blue does not fit in. But my favorite show is Arrested Development, so Lucille Bluth, or potentially Lucille Austero, Lucille 2, whichever Lucille you want it to be, it's that one. Lucille came home, and I love her. She is awesome. She is very huffy, and quite I don't, like, defensive is probably the word, but not bitey defensive, just like runs away defensive and huffy. She's a sweetheart. She has bit somebody. I think that one of my friend's fingers looks more like a worm than other people's fingers. She really like gently opened her mouth and just like clamped on. It was not like an aggressive bite or anything, and she was just sitting on the couch with me, and she walked over to my friend, and she's pretty good when she comes out of her enclosure at being handleable and stuff. But I've worked with her. It's been slow. I don't take her out every day, and I left her for quite a while when I got her. But yeah, so she's a little bit fun. She's funny. She's a funny personality. She eats like a tank, and her health problems are definitely unique. She has no toes, really. They look like little mittens. I'll try to put in a picture. She has maybe 1 or 2 toes that still have toenails, and I think that they may go the wayside over time just because they're not in good shape. Her old owners claimed that she had foot rot. That's definitely a lie. It was just poor husbandry, stuck shed, they fell off. She doesn't have foot rot, and it doesn't even look like she might have foot rot. She does have mouth rot. So the rescue told me, like, hey, she had mouth rot when she came in. It still looks like she might have mouth rot, but it looks really, really good, so we put her up. So I do have to clean her mouth out after she eats, and kind of carefully with a little Q-tip. She's been a little sassy lately, and she will bite onto the Q-tip, which is really funny. And they are strong, and I have to really carefully, because I don't want her to like eat the fuzz and stuff, carefully get the Q-tip out. But we've got our routine down. She's great. She loves to bask. I don't think has ever been given a basking spot in her life. I think she has UVB. She may have mild metabolic bone disease. She has some weird stuff with like one of her shoulders. I don't know if it's metabolic bone disease or an old injury or something, but she's getting pretty heavily supplemented right now, and she will be, and she eats good. She eats great, and I love making up her little salads with some dog food mixed in. I'll probably see if I can get some, like, hornworms or something, see if she likes those as a little treaty treat. Her favorite treat is blueberries. It's so cute. She loves blueberries, but she gets diarrhea, so gotta limit the blueberries, even though it's so cute how much she likes blueberries. I've given them to her a few times as a treat. I'll put them on top of her food, and I'll literally come back, and only the blueberries are gone. Oh, she's so cute. It's very similar, but also different than with Xiao. She's the biggest lizard I've ever owned, and probably won't be the biggest lizard I do own, because I'd imagine that I would get probably a big lizard one day, like a tegu. But she's big, and she's awesome. She sits really nicely, and she's just been a really, really, really great addition to my home. She's got nice basking light, some good UVB. She doesn't have a ton of stuff in her enclosure right now because she's essentially disabled. She does not have the best mobility of any lizard I've ever met. And also she's a skink, so she doesn't really climb. But she has a really nice big, like almost the length of her enclosure cork round. She has another hide, and she has like a piece of slate for like extra basking. She'll either bask on the slate or she'll bask higher, closer to her light on top of her cork round, and then she sleeps in the cork round most of the time, and then sometimes she goes into her other little enclosure or her little hide. And then she has a big water bowl, which she really likes to ponder over, similar to Michael, which is cool. She's 7 years old, and she's also an Indonesian blue-tongued skink. So, kind of weird. Indonesian blue-tongued skinks aren't really bred in captivity because it's cheaper to take them from the wild and ship them here. And that's a strange thing to say, but it's true because blue-tongued skinks are not easy to breed. There's different ones. There's Indonesians, and there's like Australian, Northerns, Easterns, like stuff like that. She is an Indonesian, which means they have different care. They need way higher humidity, and it's the whole thing. Not a care guide, but just a differentiation. She's an Indonesian. They claim that she came from a breeder. I don't think she did, because that just really doesn't happen a lot in Canada. But northern blue-tongued skinks, so blue-tongued skinks that come from like Australia, those ones are always captive bred because, well, with really minor exceptions, but like they're always captive bred in Canada for the most part because it's completely illegal to take them from the wild in Australia. So Indonesia, it's encouraged, you ship them over, it's cheap. In Australia, you have to breed them. So northern blue-tongued skinks are ones from Australia, different care requirements. They're always captive bred. Indonesians are almost always wild caught. Very weird. So maybe a million years ago she was wild caught. I don't like owning wild caught animals. I think that really the only good time to own wild caught animals is if you're going to breed them, because then you are getting wild caught animals, you're breeding them. That means that less people will have to take them from the wild. But anyway, I do own a wild caught, probably blue-tongue skink, even though apparently she came from a breeder, but she probably didn't. Blue-tongue skinks are really hard to breed because they're really nasty to each other. They're mean. They're like lychee geckos, but they kill each other. Lychee geckos are a little rough. They like it rough. Blue-tongue skinks kill each other. So, yeah, I mean, lychee geckos can kill each other during breeding, but blue-tongue skinks, it's not great. So, if you might have to go through a couple pairs of blue-tongue skinks before you get ones that are not going to kill each other and are going to be chill, and you can have multiple litters of blue-tongue skinks. But yeah, so that's Lucille. She's rad. The people had her for 7 years. She had okay but not great care. And she lost all her toes, which is pretty common in poorly cared for reptiles. She has mouth rot, also super common in poorly cared for reptiles. Maybe some mild MBD. And yeah, like, I don't really know. I don't know if it was a kid's pet and the kid moved out. I don't know if they just couldn't care for her anymore. I don't know the situation. I wasn't given all the details. But I love her. I failed last year and I got 2 reptiles. Technically, I got accepted to get her on like 10 p.m. on New Year's Eve, which is a little bit of a cheat, but I actually brought her into my home in 2025. So yeah, those are my stories on how I ended up with 2 rescue reptiles. I love them both. They're both my babies. I will be their forever home. The only reason that I would not be their forever home is if I die, because I love my reptiles. They're the best part of my day. I absolutely love taking care of all of my animals. Same with my plants. If anybody else owns my reptiles, I'm dead. Because we go on a long, long life journey together in this house. Get your reptiles slowly, okay? I know what it's like to get too many plants and watch them all die. I will never do that with my pets. Get them slowly. And that'll never, like I said, never ever happen with my pets. But it has happened with my plants. I have gotten too many plants and then I can't take care of them anymore and gone. So get reptiles slowly. If you have to downsize and you have to give them away, please look into reputable rescues that you can give them to in your area, or find people in your community who are familiar with caring for that specific species of reptile, willing to do the research, whatever. Find them a good home. Try to make sure that the second home that your reptile goes to is their forever home, please. There's no shame in rehoming if you have to do it. You should always give your reptiles to another home if you feel that you're just not up to caring for them anymore, or whatever happens in your life. Maybe you're just not into it. Maybe you thought they'd be more interesting than they are. Reptiles aren't really that interesting. If it came from a breeder, you can usually give them back to a breeder if it's a reputable breeder. But if, and actually you're usually mandated to in your contract. But if, finds a good home for it. There's lots of good reputable rescues out there that you can find. There's lots of reptile rescues. You probably don't know they exist, but I guarantee they do somewhere in your area. Love your reptiles. If you need to give them to another home, there's people like me who will gladly take them when they have the space and are ready. This is not an invite, by the way, to be like, hey, I have a reptile I don't want anymore. Do you want it? No. No. These are very specific circumstances. I would really not like to do what I had to do with Xiao again. That was very last minute, and I knew that it was not going to go well if I took her, but it was not a good feeling almost forced to take a reptile. Lucille was of my own free will, and I love her, and obviously, despite Xiao being nearly forced onto me, I do love her very much. But there are people like me, they will take your reptiles, and if you want to take on a reptile from a rescue, I really recommend going the rescue route. I didn't actively seek out a random person to reach out to me. They were just like, hey, I know a weird girl who likes reptiles. Maybe she'll take it. And I did. So maybe you'll get that reputation. It'll happen to you. But I really recommend going through like rescue. If you can support them in any way, like getting the equipment from them and stuff so that you're supporting the care of other animals for them. And yeah, I think it's great. Know what you're getting into. Make sure that the rescue gives you all the information you need. If the animal might need extra help, like caring for their mouth rot or removing stuck shed, make sure you do that research. Make sure you're understanding that these animals don't come from the best situations, so it's not going to be the most tame animal on the planet likely, and that will take work, or it might never happen. Lucille is pretty great. She obviously was handled occasionally, and so she's okay. Xiao will never, I don't think, ever be the type of gecko that would be able to be handled easily at all, which is okay. But like know that when you get them, it may not be the animal you want it to be, right? And it is an animal, so at the end of the day, you choose to own it, and it did not choose to be owned by you. So respect it and its wishes if it's a total weirdo and it doesn't want to be nice to you. Animals do not owe you love. I'll say it a million times. Animals do not owe you love. You chose to own them. You own them in whatever state they come to you and whatever state they decide to be in. And that's my video. Thank you for listening to my all over the place story time of how I ended up with my 2 rescued animals. I love them so much. And maybe in the next one, I will actually make a plant-related video. In fact, I don't want to lie and say I definitely will, but I think I will. Because I have some cool plant stuff to talk about right now. But it's always hard to film a plant video because I just don't really have the space to take them out. It's kind of hard. And I'm lazy. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!